Each fire safety system is critical in protecting lives and assets. They've all been designed and engineered to save lives and protect the building it's installed in. So if it's faulty or damaged, the life safety of the building and occupants can be severely jeopardized. We maintain and service our systems to preserve and save life. It has been found during an event or incident, 90% of the time the power will fail, but the emergency lighting will keep escape routes illuminated, helping passage to fresh air and escape. A 10mm hose can fill a 5-meter square room with smoke within 15 minutes. And most maintenance visits uncover at least one fault or problem with the equipment. Having a planned preventative maintenance, or PPM as it's commonly abbreviated to, will save you money in the long run. A PPM or maintenance contract is much more cost effective than reactive maintenance, as you can maintain your system rather than wait for expensive repairs. You'll also save money due to a number of other reasons, and this could be for the likes of reduction in total labour cost. Maintenance contracts normally come with reduced charges or hourly rates, and this will normally filter on to any remedial works or installations that you may require in the future. It will save you money with regards to your insurance premium. Most companies will get a cheaper rate if your systems are fully maintained and compliant. 100% of your fire alarm needs to be maintained every year. Having a system that is not maintained will invoid your insurance premium, and God forbid, if a death occurred due to a faulty or non-maintained system in accordance to the guidelines, then the building's owners is more than likely to face prosecution. With a BS 5839 system, all fire alarm detectors and control panels are to be tested weekly by a housing manager or responsible person and serviced regularly. I would recommend biannually by an accredited engineer. The British standards for fire doors is BS 8214 and recommends a competent person inspects the fire doors every 6 months. If you are a housing manager or a caretaker, I would recommend monthly checks for doors and traffic routes, main entrances and corridors.
The order does not apply to domestic premises and so would not apply to the internal aspects of the flats themselves. Broadly, the order places obligations on the responsible person for a building or part of a building to undertake a fire risk assessment and to put in place such general fire safety precautions as are considered necessary from that assessment. The responsible person for a place of work will be the employer, and the responsible person for a residential building will usually be the person that owns the building or has control over the premises, so maybe a managing agent. Probably the most significant piece of development in this area, we're currently seeing the Building Safety Bill complete its passage through Parliament. Now, the bill sets out a new scheme for the management of higher risk buildings, so broadly those buildings over 80 metres or at least 7 stories tall that are in occupation. It requires the accountable person, yet another duty holder that we have to grapple with, and the principal accountable person, another duty holder we have to grapple with the definition of, for a building to take a holistic approach to building safety, taking a view as to how the different aspects of a building's day-to-day operation impact the overall safety of the building and taking action to mitigate the risks accordingly. Notably, you should identify who the responsible person is for the relevant areas of the building and who the accountable person will be. Now, broadly, if you're the owner or manager of a building, you're likely to have at least some role under the Building Safety Bill and are likely to be the accountable person. You must ensure your fire risk assessments are up to date and, importantly, reflect the building in its current state. It's not an aspirational document, it's a realistic document. If any of the control measures suggested by the risk assessment have not yet been put in place, this should be discussed with your assessor and suitable measures should be implemented in the meantime whilst the control measure is outstanding or awaiting completion. And the Building Safety Bill introduces the concept of a golden thread, a clear trail of documents showing the history of a building and the journey to fire safety compliance. Now, even if you have buildings that don't operate or don't fall into the scope of the Building Safety Bill, I actually think this golden thread idea is a really key for all property owners and managers. As part of the development of the thread, landlords will need to locate older documents, work out how they're going to retain and order documents moving forward. And obviously the portal that you've seen today is a great example of how you can track and keep on top of those documents and what's happening in terms of your buildings. Also, under the Building Safety Bill, residents will get the right to request information and documents. And so where this applies, landlords will need to think how they will direct and fulfill such requests. If, as a result of the door being a leaseholder's responsibility, the owner cannot change the door, inspect it, for example, without permission, to comply with its requirements under the order, it will likely need to demonstrate that so far as practical, it's encouraging, enforcing the leaseholder to take the action to uphold the standards and condition of the door, but also importantly, to allow the building owner or manager to help them in doing that. If the fire door is the owner's responsibility, and we imagine for most cases, and particularly in relation to where it's a tenancy agreement the property is dealt with under, then it will be required to the owner will be required to ensure the door, when installed, meets the required standards and is kept in good condition, repair and proper working order.
Have you got any comments on the latest amendments to the Building Safety Bill?
I assume this is in relation to the building safety manager aspect of it. Now, I think it's an interesting decision to remove the building safety manager. I can see some of the logic behind it in terms of the reasons why. However, in my mind, what I would say is I think there is still a role, perhaps not a legal recognised role, but that a lot of the spirit behind the building safety manager is still very valuable. And it comes down to a lot of what I commented on in terms of a holistic approach.
So we've had someone saying, I've received a HSFRA that indicated a stay put policy to be in place for a building that is managed by the question asker. However, they've always done evacuations. It's a Victorian building of timber construction. So should I interrogate this with the company that did the assessment, as it may be a mistake?
I think from my perspective, from a legal perspective, I think it may well be different from Paul's practical perspective. My view would be, if you are uncertain, ask the question and deal with it. And don't sort of let that sort of itchy thought in the back of your head lie. Have a conversation about it, and make sure you fully understand the reasons. Stay put policies still do have a role in a lot of buildings, so just because it's something they haven't dealt with previously doesn't mean it's not the case, but make sure you understand the reasons for it, because obviously it will be your staff who will be helping to enact it and having to justify that position to the fire service in conversations and inspections. I don't know if, Paul, you've got anything practically to add to that.
I was going to say, obviously, if it is a stay put policy, one thing you do want to make sure is that you've had a proper compartmentation survey on the whole property, because if you're asking someone to stay in a section of a building that hasn't got the correct fire stopping, or it's not compartmentated correctly, then you're asking someone to sit in a building that doesn't really comply. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that moving forward.
No, that's definitely interesting. Definitely agree. And sort of similar sort of point. If a building was previously an evacuation policy but's changed to stay put, I guess this would be sort of for both on the panel. What changes do we need to undertake? And I guess what will be the most important changes, sort of the first ones to, I'm guessing, like you mentioned, Paul, compartmentation survey and rectifying that. Is that fair? Yeah,
you can't ask someone to sit in that flat when it's not got the correct fire stopping. We're human, we want to escape a fire if it is breathing down our neck. So yeah, as long as the correct compartmentation is done, then you can apply the stay safe or stay put policy.